What's happening? Andy here. Hey, it's kind of late tonight. I'm going to talk just for a little while. Hey, I got something. I've got so much stuff in this room. I'm going to show you something that's really cool. Check this out. Just a second. I'm going to talk about it for a minute. Check that out. You can't really see it a whole lot. Wait a minute. Seriously, check this thing out. You know what this is? Here, there we go. Can you see it? It's about 6 feet long. It's actually, I'll just take the spearhead off. There we go. So you can just see the spear. It's kind of cool. You know what this is? This is actually an authentic spear from the Belgian Congo. I had a great uncle who was my grandmother's older brother, and he was a missionary in the Belgian Congo from 1910 until 1920. He was born actually in 1885. So between the ages of, he was actually a minister, so between the ages of 25 and 35, he actually lived in the Congo. This is over 100 years ago. He actually lived to be 96. He lived until 1981, a couple of years before I came to California. So I knew him when I was a kid, but he was an ancient man. But I inherited a lot of his stuff when he passed away, probably because I was the only one in my family who was interested in all this weird stuff. Like I had an elephant foot, and I've got daggers and pieces of elephant tusks. I've got all kinds of weird stuff that I inherited. At one time, I had a boa constrictor skin. I had all kinds of weird African stuff. Some of it just kind of rotted and we got rid of, but this is one of my favorite pieces. But really cool. I just have it stuck in the corner. Just want to talk about it while people are getting on. From the Congo. And it's made out of some, it's made out of some really weird metal. I can't even, and the wood, some really foreign. It's real hard and real dark. I don't even know what it is. Anyway, that's kind of cool. My uncle, his name was Leland Foster Wood. He actually wrote several books back in the 30s and 40s. Most of them were about family dynamics. He was later he got a PhD and he became a professor and minister in religious pursuits, I think, in the University of Chicago, and he worked there I think all the way up from the 30s all the way up to the 60s. Incredible life of adventure and just intellectual pursuit. But that's some of the influences that I have in my life. It was really interesting being around someone like that as a kid, because he was somebody that had so many dreams, and I know a lot of the other adults really looked up to him, even though he was older than everybody. But he just had a lot of influence on our family, even though he was so old. I mean, I remember him in his late 80s and 90s when I was a kid. He always had funny stories. He had he'd take a handkerchief and he would turn it into like a rabbit, and then he would make funny voices and stories, I mean, he was even entertaining into his 90s, and I'll never forget that. Just being around that kind of a quality human being was always very influential, But, boom. Now, what I want to talk about, what we want to talk about today, to get back on subject, is, when did you sell out? Kind of on the note of what we're talking about. When did you sell out your dream? When did you stop wanting that? When did you go get a job just because it needed to pay the bills, and then a year or two went by and time went by and you got comfortable, and then maybe you went another job a little bit better, and then maybe a decade went by? In the back of your head, there were certain dreams that you wanted to do. You wanted to write a book, you wanted to start a business, you wanted to help other people some way, you wanted to volunteer. I mean, what was it that was your dream? Did you want to play a certain sport and you needed to dedicate a certain amount of time for it, but the 6 o'clock news and the sitcoms took over at night? Or you weren't willing to get up early enough before you started your day to go after your dream? But what was it when? What was that moment? I mean, I'm not talking about me, but for you, when you decided to sell out, or you became like the Pink Floyd song, when did you become comfortably numb? You know, when did that happen? The good part about it is, every day is a new day. Every day is a new day. Every day can be a new chapter in your life. And sometimes the biggest success stories are the people who actually achieve their dreams ultimately through trial and error. Ultimately, it either comes through perspiration or through desperation. And sometimes desperation is actually quicker. And, you know, it's the scarier route, it's the scarier tour to go down. But let me explain. Perspiration just means you take massive action. You decide you have a dream. If it means getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, if it means coming home when you come home from your job and working from 6 until midnight or 1 o'clock, or you take a period of time out of your day rather than being comfortable and watching television and joining the baseball team or the lacrosse team, or, you know, being somebody's coach. You focus. You focus on activity. You focus on your dreams. Hey Kim, how you doing? Yeah, I am burning the midnight oil, that's for sure. Actually, I'm in California, so heck, it's only 8:30 here. And in my friends in England, it's yeah, it is middle of the night. My friends in Australia, man, I got friends in Australia, they're probably watching me too. Anyways, if, you know, to get back on what I was saying, if you get back, you know, to desperation or perspiration. Perspiration is the easiest way to go. It just means you focus on your dream, you know. It just means going for it. You know, spending that, you know, like what's that book I did the other day? Oh yeah, the Miracle Morning. You know, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, spend time on your thoughts, you know, mentally and physically work out a little bit. Get things out of the way. Get the difficult things out of the way during your day, and then start your day if you still have a job. But work towards getting your own business and creating whatever your dream is, okay? And you got to set time for that. The other part is perspiration, okay? Perspiration means, you know, maybe you lost your job, you know? Maybe you've got, you know, all of a sudden you have all this stress laid upon you, and your back is up against the wall, or you're in a ditch, and you've got no other place to go but up. Sometimes that's actually the best place to be. It really is, because you've got nowhere else to go but up. And it may not look like that to others, but sometimes desperation calls for desperate action. You know, that's when you're forced to take massive action. It's when you're forced to learn and to surround yourself with other people. So it's either you're going to get your dream and you're going to get out of your comfort zone, either by perspiration or desperation. Okay? You know, that's really one thing I want to talk about today. Otherwise, I have a link in this when it gets published. I can't really see everybody who's on. There's quite a few people on, but hey, Dagmar, how you doing? The other thing, there's a couple books. I always throw a couple books out there because I've got like hundreds of them around here. Some of them I'm revisiting, but if, you know, after this is published, some people will see it tomorrow, but there's a couple books you got to read. If you haven't read either one of these books, you've probably been underneath a rock, or if you're not familiar with them. But just in keeping in theme with what we're talking about, you know, this guy here, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's the perfect definition of, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? You know, are you going to be an entrepreneur, or are you going to work and create somebody else's dream? Because ultimately, that's what you're doing. You're either creating your own dream, or you're working your butt off creating somebody else's dream. So it's better, I guess it's the blue pill. I guess in our case, it's probably the orange pill. The orange pill will get you where you want to go in your own terms. And I think everybody wants to be able to live life in their own terms. Understanding that and breaking that down, I don't think it's ever been more clear and then in a book like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I could really relate to this book because my dad was definitely in the context that they're talking about this book. My dad was actually the stereotypical poor dad in a lot of ways. I mean, he was, it was always education, formal education. He was actually a high school principal, and it really explains, that influence that was on me for years and years. It's very difficult to be in an entrepreneurial mentality when you're surrounded by just education, formal education. That's how you're going to succeed, and that's really kind of, I think it's a throwback from the 30s and 40s and 50s, really, because my father grew up in, the Depression, World War II, and post World War II. So it was a different mentality. Everything to get ahead was education. One thing they didn't even have it really when I was a kid, and I wish they did, is called the internet. You have that availability now, so there's no reason not to. The link that I have in this, I'm not going to talk a whole lot longer. I'm going to show you one more book. The link in there is freedomtrain.net, freedom/train.net. If you want a lot of free content on how to raise money to get your business going, what direction to go to get an online business going, how to surround yourself with the correct people, the link will be in this when it gets published, freedomtrain.net. The other one I want to point out to you real quick, this is a must, It's called the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. He actually wrote a number of books. This is probably one of his most successful ones. I think this was written back in the 80s. I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad was actually late 80s, early 90s. It's been around. Both these books been around probably 25 years, but the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there's certain things you want to work in your day, okay? And just the name, I'm just going to read off these different chapters. Chapter 1, be proactive. Take massive action. Take action. You have to take action. You can't just think about what you want to do. You got to take action. And with this, what I'm trying to do is give you every opportunity to take action. Begin with the end in mind. Think about the long game. Where do you want to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road? And think about what the end result of what you're trying to do is. Put first things first. Go after the things, maybe do the things that are the most uncomfortable for you, or get the things that are the most difficult out of the way. You can do that each day. You can do that, it's a good way to start your day, is get the most difficult thing out of the way. Think win-win. How am I going to do this? I'm either going to do it this way and win this way, or I'm going to do it this way and win that way. It's a good habit to discover. Seek first to understand and then be understood. Basically, you want to learn information, and then you want to be a teacher of that information. In other words, you want to be able to help other people through your own insight and your own education. So it's all part of learning certain subjects, implement them, and then be a teacher of those subjects and help other people through your implementation and through the success that you've had through your implementation. Synergize. Principles of creative cooperation. That's chapter 6. And chapter 7 is sharpen the saw. Principles of a balanced self-renewal. Okay, that's the 7 habits of highly effective people. I would really, if you've probably read this one, but if you haven't, it's a good book to review again, because if you're going to be talking in front of people, there's a good quadrant in Rich Dad, Poor Dad that you really want to understand, the mentality behind, where some people are at. You really want to read that. And then 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. A couple of good books to be reading in the next couple weeks. Other than that, who's Scott? Hey, Scott, how you doing? Hey, Matt, how you doing? All right. Other than that, hey, let's talk about what other. Let's look at this again. This is cool. In fact, check this out real quick. It's got all this This is the handle. I don't even know what this material. It's got some kind of really weird wire on here. So this thing is actually from the 19th century. This is probably 1880s. And when I was a kid, I'll leave the point on there. When I was a kid, my uncle always said, don't ever touch the point because it's poisonous. I realized, no, he just didn't want us to, when we were kids, he just didn't want us messing with it. So I remember even all the way up until I was like 30 years old, I used to be afraid to touch this thing because it was supposed to have some kind of poison on it. Talk about talk about being an influence. Anyways, boom. That's the Congo. That's the adventure for tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be around almost every day. I think I'll probably have a cigar either tomorrow or Saturday, and we'll talk in the backyard, and we can have a cigar and some whiskey. How about that? Anyways, have a good evening, guys. Thanks for listening.